Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss the Ides of March, starring Ryan Gosling, George Clooney, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Paul Giamatti, Marissa Tomei, Jeffrey Wright, and Evan Rachel Wood, directed by George Clooney. Now, I have seen this movie before in the theaters, and what do I think of it? Well, it's going to be the same as what I'm about to think of it now. Let's get into the movie. Democratic campaign manager Stephen Myers, played by Ryan Gosling, tests the speaker before Democratic candidate Governor Mike Morris, played by the movie's director George Clooney, talks on it at the presidential debate as everybody, including the Republicans, hate on their candidate Senator Pullman, which seems like a little unrealistic, sure. While we meet intern Molly Stearns, played by Evan Rachel Wood, Ben Harpin, played by Max Minghella, excuse me if I said that wrong, Paul Zara, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Republican campaign manager Tom Duffy, who I'm going to keep calling throughout the show, played by Paul Giamatti, while Governor Morris makes his Democratic speech. As the next scene comes in, Stephen and Paul have a drink with reporter Ida Horowitz, I don't know if I said that right, please forgive me, played by Marissa Tomei. While she's trying to get information from them about where Governor Morris is going to next, and these two opening scenes makes me connect with the characters as they're very likable. The the Governor Morris team gets new cell phones and tells them to keep the phones on them, while Stephen hears something negative about Governor Morris and tells the tech people to get rid of it, as Molly asks Stephen to get a drink with her that night at a quiet bar, and they have good chemistry, sure. Paul visits Senator Thompson, played by Jeffrey Wright, while Stephen has a visit with his staff, as well as Governor Morris, about what's happening to his campaign. And these scenes are shot well, as the movie is well made, in my opinion. Tom Duffy calls Stephen to meet up with him as he blackmails him to work for him at a bar, as Paul Giamatti makes a good enemy character of any protagonist in any movie, in my opinion. Stephen gets a call from Paul about a message he sent to him earlier in the movie and decides not to say anything about what happened with Tom Duffy. And Governor Morris goes on an interview on the public TV. And as we move on to Stephen and Molly going out for a drink and get to know each other and start fucking each other off screen, and we and I'm enjoying the movie thus far. Stephen goes on a plane with Governor Morris, and Ben and Stephen feels the plane shaking. And as they land, while Governor Morris is giving out a speech, Stephen tells Paul about the meeting with Tom Duffy, and he doesn't know what happened with Senator Thompson, as Paul is pissed, and the dialogue works quite well. Stephen, Paul, and Governor Morris meet about the campaign as they're preparing to lose Ohio, and they try to find a way to win Ohio, and they drive out with Governor Morris's wife, Cindy, played by Jennifer Eel, briefly, as she says Ohio won't matter as far as his campaign is concerned. And George Clooney has great charisma with the other characters, and Governor Morris meets with the Democratic students as he tries to give a young lady time to make her point, and we move on to Stephen and Molly are once again smooching up a storm in Stephen's hotel room, and Molly gets a call at 2:30 a.m. from Governor Morris about how much she needed help with money, like around $900 for some reason. And she went to Governor Morris for it, and she confesses it was Stephen, as she was with Ben, and it happened the one time, and that felt a little dramatic in my opinion. Stephen goes to his desk and asks Ben in his office in order to get the $900, while he asks Molly asks to meet him in the stairwell around noon, and he goes to the bank and gets the $900 plus the extra $900, so that's $1,800. And Ida or something like that asks about Stephen meeting with Tom Duffy, and Stephen's career is in trouble as he calls Tom Duffy, and the meeting is. And my money is on Paul, who told Ida about Stephen who told Paul earlier in the movie, as Molly goes upstairs to give her to make Steven give her $1,800 as he takes her to a clinic as she was pregnant, and he tells her to go back home as the movie is making itself giving a down 5-notch rating, which I'll get to at the end of the show as it is kind of falling apart from there. Paul visits Steven in his hotel room and fires Steven on the spot because of meeting with the enemy, which happens to be Tom Duffy, as Ben was in the room with them as Paul doesn't trust Steven anymore, and Molly finishes up with the clinic and doesn't tell Steven about it, but she goes to Ben as he tells her Steven got fired for trust reasons for the campaign, and he says he has Steven's position, and another 5 notches goes down as far as the recommendation is concerned. As it does go down from there. Steven goes to Tom Duffy and says he wants to work for him and tries to blackmail Governor Morris, and Steven is unstable as he has something big for Tom Duffy as he tells him to give him the job, and Tom Duffy doesn't give him the job after being fired from Governor Morris. And the movie is luckily 100 minutes long, as I don't want this movie to go any longer despite I do like it. Steven goes into a hotel room and sees Molly is dead, and my problem with that scene is how could housekeeping not notice that? As that was a dumb move, and I don't expect dumb from George Clooney at this point. Steven gets a call from Molly saying don't do any of the shit he's going to do, and she's not going away as she killed herself, while Steven meets with the Senator Thompson about some info about Senator Pullman, and calls and meets with Governor Morris after Molly's funeral, or while at Molly's funeral at best, or a press conference, on her cellular phone about the information, and makes a trade as he wants Paul gone to give him his job back, or else he'll expose him for fucking the interns, which was an intense conversation for damn sure, and the shots are fantastic. The next day comes and Paul gets a haircut and finishes off a meal as Governor Morris asks Paul to get in the car to fire him as he gets out of the car, looking like, what the fuck just happened? And Steven gets his job back, and they bury Molly into the ground in a funeral, and Steven goes up to Paul like they're friends, and have a brief conversation about how Paul will fuck him over, as the next president ends up being Governor Morris, thanks to Steven, and we get a new intern named Jill Morris, no relation to the governor, by the way, handing out coffee before Steven goes on an interview. Ida tries to get some words, and he refuses to, and doesn't let her pass security as she's pressed, and he goes off to the interview for the TV, and credits roll at a random point before he says a word. And this climax is pretty good, but it's not my favorite like Good Night and Good Luck, as the final act kind of falls apart. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 7.1 out of 10. The characters are relatable, as they're very likable, like Steven and Molly have good chemistry, while Tom Duffy is a good enemy of any protagonist in any movie, in my opinion. And the movie is well made, as it's a good political thriller. I enjoy the movie for what it is, which is, like I said, a political thriller, as the dialogue works quite well and George Clooney pulls off charisma with the other characters, but there were times the movie went a little dramatic by the second half of it, as this is not a long movie as it's 100 minutes long. The movie would have gotten a rating of around 8, but it falls apart after 45 minutes into the movie. But in the meantime, this is a recommendable movie, as this movie is a recommendation to see what this political thriller has to offer. And at the end of the day, it's a good movie, in my opinion. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time we'll be back with The Monuments Men. I remember not having good fond memories of that one. And until then, good night.